Chapter 7. Etrick and I headed down the beach in the only direction we had yet to explore. Although we didn't see anyone, we spotted a lone hut set off by itself. Larger than the others, it had the same cone-shaped thatched roof and stick-built walls, and it was situated on a small spit of land that overlooked the beach on one side and the tree-lined bay on the other. As we got closer, we could tell something was going on inside the hut. A shrill, scratchy voice was screaming, "Me too! Me too!" A deep, lesser distinct voice answered. Although it was broad daylight with all the greenery, we were able to sneak up and peek inside without anyone noticing. I only saw one person, a short old man with white hair, a round belly, and substantial mustache, and neat trimmed beard. Dressed in a knee-length light blue robe, the old man wore a soft four-cornered cap that threatened to slip off each time he turned his head. Both the robe and cap were decorated with scattered silver stars, and a chain of larger stars twinkled around his neck. A large green and red bird with a well-developed beak sat on a perch beside him. On a table against the wall, pink and white seashells held down the edges of a fresh piece of parchment. A quill pen lay on the table, dripping ink beside a small clay pot. From where I crouched, I could see the parchment was clean except for a few written words and a splattering of ink. "I'm sick and tired of this," grumbled the old man. "Me too," squawked the bird, shuffling back and forth on its perch. "I can't wait until we're finished and can go home." "Me too." "I wish you'd think of something else to say." "Me too." The wizard's left eye twitched. "You know, it was funny at first, and now it's just annoying. Stop saying me too, me too." The bird made a rude sound with its beak. "Now cut that out. I don't know why I put up with you." "Crack," said the bird. The old man shook a pudgy finger at the bird. "You stupid bird. If it weren't for you, we would have been finished and out of here already." "Honk," squeaked the bird. "Don't blame me, old fat. I told you that lying to a bunch of old witches would get you in trouble, but you like to steal their memories and—" "It seemed like a good idea," said old fat. "All those memories just waiting to be bottled up. Once I found the book, it was only a matter of time." "You wouldn't have needed to do it if you could come up with your own spells." Old Fat shook his head. "That wasn't the point. Those witches were once the leaders in their field. By collecting their spells, I'm doing the world of magic a service." "Then don't come crying to me when you don't like what you hear. Even you couldn't have expected those old memories to be pleasant." Sidling along his perch, the bird twisted his head to stare at the old wizard. "I never thought they'd be this bad," Old Fat wailed. "I can't stand much more." Something rattled, and I peeked over the window ledge to see what it was. A row of bottles filled a shelf that had been pegged to the opposite wall. One bottle was a sickly yellow, shot through with violet. Another was gray with purple specks of color of a bruise. While some bottles were shaking, one that was the color of dried blood looked like it was about to rattle itself completely off the shelf. "Ain't you through yet?" said a scratchy voice. "I'm sick of hearing you two yammer. Close your mouths and listen before I turn you into a couple of cockroaches." "You're so full of hot air," said another voice, shriller than the first. "You can't cast spells now. You're just a memory." "Quiet, you old crones. It's my turn, and I'm going to have my say." "Ahem," said a husky voice, clearing a non-existent throat. "I married a widower king who doted on me for my beauty. I kept my splendor for years, with the lotion I made from the dust of 1,000 butterfly wings, and the milk from 2 bushels of milkweed pods. I was very happy for a time, since I was the fairest in the land, but then my stepdaughter turned 16, and it ruined all by being even more beautiful." "1,000 butterfly wings," muttered the old man as he scribbled on a piece of parchment. Another witch cackled. "You waste your life trying to stay beautiful while I spent my days teaching lessons for those who deserved it. Every day I waited for someone to come into my woods. If a maid shared her lunch with me, I cast a spell so that each time she spoke, pearls and precious gems fell from her lips. Maids who refused to share their food had frogs, snakes, and lizards squirming from their throats." "And what if it was a gentleman instead of a maid?" said the old man. "Generous gentlemen receive swords of valor or enchanted cloaks. As for the stingy ones—" A familiar voice broke in. "I transform people as well, but not always for being selfish. I changed my daughter's betrothed into an otter because I didn't think he was good enough for her. When I told him how to break the spell, I made it so involved that he was bound to forget it." "Is that your grandmother?" Etrick whispered in my ear. I nodded, shushing him with a raised finger. So tell us what you said, demanded one voice. I don't think I will. It was too delicious. Go ahead, I thought. Tell them. That isn't fair. I told you the recipe for my beauty. We won't share anything else if you don't share with us. Oh, right, if you're going to be that way. I remember it word for word since it was so perfect. A gossamer hair from mother of pearl, a breath of a dragon green, a feather from an aged horse, the husk of a magic bean. I see what you mean. He couldn't have possibly gotten that right. It wasn't impossible, mind you, or it wouldn't have worked. But for an otter to remember that, or half of the things. How long did he stay an otter? As far as I know, he still is, screeched my grandmother. The hoots of laughter from the bottles made me so angry I felt like shaking them. And now it's my turn, screamed a voice over the din. Have I got a story? Who said you could go next? You talked yesterday, so it's my turn. I backed away from the window, tugging on Edric's sleeve. It's time for us to go, I whispered. We've heard just what we came for. But it's just getting good, he whispered, a little too loudly. What was that? Asked the bird. I think I heard something. You're always hearing something, the wizard replied. It's probably a loose seed rattling around in your skull. The bird's outraged squawk hurt my ears. Loose seeds, I'll give you. Loose seeds? Plip, plip, plip. The last thing I saw through the window before I started to run was the bird flinging seeds at the old man. We found Christina seated on the blanket beside my grandmother, who had fallen asleep again. Haywood was chasing seagulls up and down the beach and appeared to be having a wonderful time. We found the answer, I said. You have to come with us. There's a little old wizard named Olfat, began Edric, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Christina stood and brushed the sand from her gown. Olfat? I didn't know he was still alive. It's been years since I've heard anyone mention his name. Although I'm not surprised he's involved, she said, looking grim. He has a shady reputation. He's the one behind all this, said Edric. You should see his hut. He put memories in bottles and keeps them on a shelf. Christina started walking, and we hurried to catch up. He has the memories with him now? She asked, a determined glint in her eyes. Are you sure? We heard them ourselves, said Edric. He was arguing with a bird. It's the size of a crow, but it's green and red and has a much bigger beak. Sounds like a parrot. And then the other voices started talking, I said. They were calling themselves memories, but they weren't very nice. Christina shook her head. No, they wouldn't be. A nasty group of witches lives in that retirement community. Maybe all the nice ones moved away, or never moved there in the first place, once they'd learned who already lived there. Not all witches are that nasty. That's good, Edric said, smiling at me. He pointed at the hut down the beach. We listened through the window, and we heard your... Christina held up a hand for silence. You two did very well, but I think you'd better stay outside. It may get rather unpleasant in there. Once again, Edric and I crouched beneath Olfat's window. Hearing my aunt knock on the door, I peeked over the sill, careful to stay out of sight. The old wizard looked startled. Who do you suppose that is? Olfat asked his parrot. The parrot squawked and threw another seed at him. You're the wizard. You tell me. Olfat took his hat off, trickling seeds onto the floor. His head was bald, except for a fringe of hair that reached from ear to ear. Frowning, he rubbed his bald spot before jamming his hat back on. Come in, he called, his eyelid twitching so much it looked like a living thing trying to escape. When Christina opened the door, all the blood drained from Olfat's face. Muttering under his breath, he began to reach into a fold of his robe, but Christina threw her hand up and pointed a finger at him. No word, no gesture shall you make. Silence keep for your life's sake. Olfat's mouth flew open, then it seemed as if he were about to speak, but nothing came out, and his eyes took on a wild look. His jaw waggled and his Adam's apple jerked up and down. The parrot squawked, bobbing its head like a broken child's toy. Would you look at that? That's the first time I've seen my old man speechless. You should have come here sooner. Why, we... Christina pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, a look that too often meant that someone was in trouble. Silence, bird, or you're never going to speak again, either, she said. The parrot's beak closed with a snap. Christina nodded, apparently satisfied. Now let's get down to business. Pointing her finger at the old man once more, she recited a truthfulness spell. Let the truth be known to all, no more tales, short or tall. May the words we need to hear pass from your lips to waiting ear. From this day on, the truth you'll tell. There's just one way to break the spell. 3 selfless acts you must perform to aid a stranger who's forlorn. It was a spell I'd heard before. Only a few months earlier a knight had boasted that he was responsible for the death of a dragon terrorizing a neighboring kingdom. When someone questioned the knight's story, Gracina was called in to verify the truth. It was an important point, for whoever had killed the dragon would win the hand of the princess and get half the kingdom. It turned out that a groom in the king's stable had really been responsible, which pleased the princess, for he was younger and much better looking than the knight. The truth would probably have never come out if it wasn't for Gracina. As my aunt finished the spell, Olfat's eyes grew large and his hands began to shake. I wondered if he had heard the spell and knew what it meant. "You may talk now," said Gracina, "but I must say that you should be ashamed of yourself. It wasn't the first time you've done something like this, I warrant." "No, I've done the same thing before." Even while he spoke, a look of horror came across Olfat's features. Stepping back, he clapped both hands over his mouth. "Now tell me, how did you get their memories?" Olfat shook his head, but it didn't do him any good, for the words spilled out no matter what he did. "I bought a book from a merchant who didn't know what he was selling, and most of the spells were useless, so I tried the memory spell and it worked. I'm terrible at coming up with spells on my own, so I thought this was the perfect way to get some good ones." The parrot squawked and flicked another seed at Olfat. "Stop talking, you idiot! You're going to tell her everything. Haven't you gotten us in enough trouble already?" "I can't help it," wailed Olfat. Gracina's glance shifted from the parrot back to Olfat. "How did you get the ladies to come to the island?" "I lied. I told them I'd found some great swamp land that was selling for next to nothing. Then I gave them pictures, and they wanted to leave right away." "How did you get them all here?" "That spell was in the book, too. The witches needed something as a focus, so I gave them bags of sand. I linked their brooms with a spell, and took their memories the moment they landed." Gracina nodded as if she'd suspected something that had just been confirmed. "And where is this book now?" "Don't tell her, you idiot!" screeched the parrot. Olfat struggled to keep his mouth closed, squeezing his lips shut with his fingers. When he tried to speak anyway, his words were indistinguishable. Gracina sighed and reached out to pinch his nose so that he was forced to breathe through his mouth. The old man held out as long as he could, but when his face started to turn blue, he let go of his lips, gasped once, and blurted out, "It's in the chest under the table." "Yeah!" shrieked the parrot. "Now you've done it, you old fool!" Olfat began to weep enormous tears. When Gracina started toward the table, the parrot let out an ear-splitting screech and flew at her in a flurry of beak and claws. I sensed movement beside me, and a furry body jumped through the window. Although I hadn't realized Haywood had joined us, he seemed to know exactly what was going on. In a flash, he tackled the bird and had it pinned to the floor. The bird beat its wings in his face and tried to bite him, but I guess the otter was used to uncooperative food because he knew how to hold it down without getting hurt. "Haywood, my darling, be careful," Gracina said. "I'm fine, my sweet," the otter assured her before turning back to the bird. Pressing down on the thrashing parrot, he said, "If you don't stop that right now, I'll rip your beak off and stuff it down your scruffy little throat." The parrot's beak closed with a snap, and it jerked its wings to its sides. "You wouldn't dare," said the parrot. Haywood smiled grimly at the bird. "Try me." "What's going on out there?" demanded a memory. "Who is that?" "I heard my daughter Gracina," said my grandmother's voice. "I'd recognize that ungrateful wench's voice anywhere." My aunt's lip curled as if she'd tasted something foul. "Hello, Mother. If you don't mind, I'm a little busy right now." "What difference would it make if I mind? My feelings never mattered to you before, but don't worry, I'll shut up and let you go about your important business, Lady High and Mighty." Ignoring the other memories who continued to mutter amongst themselves, my aunt raised the lid of the trunk and reached inside. When she sat back, she held a small brown book in her hand. "Is this the book?" she asked, holding it up for Olfat to see. The old man nodded, sniffling into his sleeve. His whole body seemed to slump. "Good," she said, tucking the book into her pouch. "Then you won't be needing it anymore." "In a way, I'm glad someone showed up," said Olfat, wiping the tears from his cheeks. "These old witches' memories were driving me crazy. Never met a nastier bunch of women. When I think about all the effort I put into this without getting any real information, they could gossip all night, they love to brag, but getting them to describe their actual spells—" "Gossip?" shrilled a memory. "Did you hear that, ladies? This old geezer called us gossips. Just wait until we get our hands on you, you old—" "You don't have hands," Olfat said, smiling through his tears. Gracina sighed and shook her head. "How do I return the memories to their owners?" "Break the bottles," Olfat said, gasping when he realized what he said. "But please, if you have any decency in you, let me go first. Those old bats would love to tear me apart." "After what you've done, this might be exactly what you deserve." With an anguished groan the old man fell to his knees and raised his clasped hands to my aunt. "Please, I beg you, let me go." "Get up, old man, and get out of here. But you'd better hurry because I'm about to break every bottle in the room. These are all the bottles, aren't they?" "Every single one is on that shelf." Christina reached for a bottle. "Are you still here?" she asked Olfat. No, wait." The old man moved faster than I thought possible. "Come on, me too," he said, grabbing the parrot from Haywood. The bird was tucked under one arm, and Olfat dragged the trunk out from under the table and climbed inside. The parrot hissed at the otter while the old man cast one last look around the room before slamming the lid shut. I heard him mutter something, and then the trunk began to move, rising off the floor and gliding out the door as smoothly as grease on water, passing Edric and me on its way to the ocean.